Vi är Spelskaparna.
Välkommen till Spelskaparna. Och idag är det sponsrat av Sky Hotel i Linköping. För vi sitter nu i ett konferensrum på det hotellet och det är i anslutning till Linköping Game Conference. And with me here I have Patrick Rose. Welcome.
Thank you very much for introducing me.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about product strategy and game design. And that is something that you have specialized in. And what does that mean, really?
Yeah, product strategy and game design. So game design is pretty clear to most people, like setting up the rules of a game and making sure the game will be played by many people and is fun to people. But what is product strategy? Well, the product strategy part, that's a lot about understanding your team, understanding the market, understanding which business model is best for you. And if you set up your business model, it's always important to consider game design as well at the same time, because business model and game design have to work together if you also want to make some money with your game in the end.
Yeah, and this is something that is pretty new in a way to the gaming industry. I mean, when it started off back in the day, everything was only focused on game design and gameplay and not that much about like how are we actually going to sell it and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that is true, especially on the studio side itself. Like the studio was always focusing on making a beautiful game, often like a game which they would like to play themselves. And then there were some publishers, marketing people and so on who were trying to put that product on the market. And often like publishers and studios ended up in having some fights about the actual game design in the end. These days, studios can self-publish. It's so much easier thanks to digitalization and different types of platforms to self-publish. So therefore, it's about the studios themselves to understand the business side too and what makes sense for them in future to be successful.
But because you have worked for, collaborated with a lot of different studios, do you meet any hurdles with people thinking that, why are you coming in with this business stuff? Do you have any struggle with that?
Yeah, a lot. Actually, just 2 months ago, I was in Poland to a conference over there, and it was a game design summit. But I was like coming in from a business viewpoint. My talk was about a business viewpoint and game design, and people didn't visited so much. So there was only like 8 people in my talk, and in the talks of the others, there were so many more people. But the people in my talk, they really appreciated it in the end. That was very interesting. But this is what I keep seeing, that game designers want to make beautiful games, but they don't want to learn about business. Problem is, if you don't know about business, then at some point you won't be able to make beautiful games anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
But do you think there would be any change in this, how you look at it? Like people will understand more that they all go together?
Yeah, there will be a change. I'm already seeing it a lot. I have been working with Bandai Namco in the past, and there has been a lot of studios which pitched the game to us, and I had a look at them. And the designs simply weren't suitable for future markets or for the current market and so on. So we couldn't work with them. And I saw also how studios were actually had to close the doors because of these things, because they can't adapt to new generations of players. I also like to call it a generation Fortnite. Those players think differently and we have to adapt to them. So yes, the future will change because either the people and the studios change their mindset about free-to-play games, for example, or they will simply die out. And I'm seeing it everywhere already, and I'm seeing it in the data, in the numbers, and it's just happening.
Yeah, I actually have a hard time with this myself, because as a player and growing up with games worked in a specific way,
Right.
They had an end,
Right.
You could beat the game, It's a bit foreign for me with the modern types of game. I completely understand that it's different for each generation and everything is evolving. But as a player, I have a hard time like coping with. It's kind of a disconnect for me that I wish that the games were as I remember them, but still I understand this complexity.
It's a bit like with old companies which still haven't managed to digitalize. This is a huge problem in Germany, in my home country actually, that the big companies can't digitalize. And it's a bit similar now these days with the games industry. People stick to their old patterns so much and they don't want to learn from the young people. Other types of games, other types of business models, that doesn't mean that those games can't be fun or can't be good. It is just that we don't try even to make them good and of high quality because we are so focusing on premium games and making them high quality. And that is kind of sad, I think. I think we need more creativity and quality within the free-to-play sector as well. And it's going to happen sooner or later because the new generations of game designers will also have a new mindset, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. But you yourself, do you usually play free-to-play games or do you play premium games? Or?
I'm an old person, basically an old traditional gamer. My favorite games are like Final Fantasy VII and Mass Effect series and Metal Gear Solid and so on. So these type of games are my favorite games. But at the same time, I really, really try to open up for free-to-play games too. And I know that I simply had a lot of fun with them, even though they didn't have like huge marketing campaigns, which got me hugely engaged for them up front. But when I was actually playing them, I was enjoying them so much that I really, really played with my Alliance members for a very long time. And this is something most AAA games can't even achieve, making me play for a very long time and having fun with the game for a very long time.
Yeah. But for me, I'm kind of, I've been playing more and more free-to-play games recent years. Right. And I mean, when I have got exposed for these types of games for a longer while, you kind of adapt a little bit.
Yeah.
But I still have this lingering feeling that you can't complete them.
Yeah.
But now I'm more enjoying, like, I played the Clash Royale for a while, and then I'm not playing it anymore. But I enjoyed that the period when I did play it. Yeah. But still, this old feeling of I didn't finish it is a bit stuck with me. But I can also feel that you actually do adapt.
Yeah, it's kind of two things. In the past, there has been games which we played for a long time. Like even if we think of Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever you might have played back in school. I don't know what people in Sweden played, but there's a lot of games which you just never finish. And this is even more like classical type of games. When we think where games are coming from, like before there was video games, there was like other type of games like soccer or like whatever.
Oh yeah.
And it's nothing you finish. It's something you get together. It's actually even more natural to get together and just have some kind of activity and just do that. And there is not necessarily a narrative behind, or there is actually a lot of narrative in soccer, for example, but the narrative sticks to the players and to the leagues and so on. And it's kind of similar in free-to-play games, if you think about it. There is narrative in pretty much every free-to-play game out there. In Fortnite, for example, every match is having its own narrative. It's things you experience. It's a narrative design which is like given from the gameplay itself. And you actually experience stories you will talk about later. And on top of that, they have a very interesting narrative design in Fortnite especially, which is a lot told through the marketing campaigns and so on. Especially if you look at the latest event in Fortnite, what happened there, Fortnite 2.0. Not sure if you have seen that actually.
No, I've not.
But they said like the world is going to end, this is going to be the end. And people were thinking like, what's going to happen? And if you played the game shortly before the game ended, you actually were able to see like an epic sequence going on with even epic soundtrack in the middle of a regular Fortnite game. And that was incredible what was going on there. That was a piece of video game history, narrative video game history. And this is another very new way how free-to-play games can actually also tell stories. If we're just creative enough and open-minded enough to put our ideas into these games.
Yeah, interesting way of thinking about it. But do you think it will be possible to combine like more traditional games with this type of business strategy, which is more free to play? I mean, like linear stories and that type of thing.
Yeah, if you want to, I would say it makes a lot of sense to get inspired by by traditional games. I mean, what I always like to do, and I actually did it in the past, I was sitting together with some game designers, typical premium game designers, and we talked about this topic, like how can you now, when you're forced to make a free-to-play game, how can you still make a free-to-play game which is good and you like to play? And the result can be something like Warframe, for example. If you know Warframe, it started up as a very small free-to-play game for PC, which looked kind of cool, but all the dungeons and levels and so on were procedurally generated. So it was mainly about leveling up and stuff, and with kind of fun gun and fighting gameplay. But what they made out of it these days with a deep story, world, narrative, and so on, and a plot, and super stylish battle gameplay and open worlds, it's just incredible. And there's a lot of traditional game design in there. A lot of stuff people used to like. And I have never heard anyone saying that Warframe is a bad game, even though it's totally free to play.
So how are they monetizing that thing?
Well, they are mainly selling cool things, basically. So it means cool skins, cool animations, and these kind of things. And their monetization these days is also pretty complex. So they are also making a lot of money, and it's out now for, I think they have released the game, like, I'm not perfectly sure, but maybe 6 years ago or even longer ago. And it just keeps growing. There's a huge fan base, and people love that game.
Could you give an example of like the way you are working of a game that you how it was at the stage when you came in and what you focused on to improve it?
Yeah. So the best spot for me to come in game development is usually just at concept phase, when studios have maybe some money, some investors or anything, or they just want to start up their new game and they don't know what they should do according to market situation, what are the market trends, what kind of market business models are going to be successful in future, but also on the game design side, what kind of game designs are popular, what kind of game designs will push retention and monetization and so on. And also, and that's maybe the most important thing, what can the team do? Because if you have a team of people who only worked on premium titles, those game designers might be able to build cars, but they can't build airplanes. In my example, like the free-to-play or games as a service are airplanes, and the premium games are cars, if that makes sense. But it's like with these engineers. If you hire people who are good at building cars, they can't build airplanes. That's what I mean, basically. So you have to look at your team, and not only at their skills, because the game design for free-to-play and games as a service is very, very different to premium game design, and much more detailed, actually. So you don't only look at their skills, but also at their passion. If they simply are not having an open mind for free-to-play, if they really don't want to think about that, they will not develop the passion you need on your team. And these are the kind of things I will also look at, and then I will deal with it. If you have a team which really, really wants to make a premium game, and is basically only able to do this, then I will cope with that and try to find the perfect strategy for this team, for example. This is the kind of things I do.
Okay. But do you think, do you understand why it's that common that people don't find the passion to convert from doing premium games to free-to-play?
Yeah, I totally understand. As said, I'm a classical gamer myself. It's sometimes very difficult for me to say the things I see on the market, but at the same time, I know I have to deal with it too, and I try to see the chances in the upcoming opportunities, and I also see how we can actually put our creativity and the beauty of games into business models which are not that beautiful just yet, but might become beautiful in the future. I would actually very quickly give an example from the Asian markets. In Korea, for example, free-to-play games are actually the thing they are playing. There is not really other business models on the Korean market. People are not really willing to pay a lot of money for the games up front. But at the same time, the free-to-play games they are playing are of very high quality. So Korean players require high quality, and also Korean developers are great developers. So they have incredible games over there, and of most of them we didn't even ever hear about. But this model the free-to-play model doesn't have any negative connotation, and therefore all the developers are happy to create incredible free-to-play games. And we could have it over here too, if we wouldn't close our minds.
Do you have an example of a Korean game that you think have a beautiful game design in that sense?
Just have to think about that. The naming is always a little different. I think if I remember, the thing is Black Desert I'm not sure if it's free to play over here, but I know it's free to play in Korea. But over here, like the publishers thought that free to play might not make sense for the game over here. So Black Desert could be a good example, but also I think the game was called Pearl Abyss, for example, but also on the mobile market. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, mobile games are shitty," but if you look at Korean mobile games, they are incredible. They are of incredible high quality, even running on like low-end devices, and they are just super cool. A lot of action is going on and stuff, and very nice and enjoyable RPGs. And there's games like honestly, I'm not perfectly sure which games have released in Western markets, but games like Hit, for example, or what else is there? Seven Nights is a pretty cool turn-based RPG with some storyline. The storyline is explained in different ways than we're used to, but there's even a lot of narrative inside.
But let's talk a little bit about the psychology of this. It seems like premium games. It seems so simple. You just you make a great game, you put a price tag on it, and then because it's good, someone will buy it. But apparently, it works better to have something free to play.
The problem is there's a lot of great premium games out there which simply don't sell. We had that issue a lot in the past. We were creating some great AAA games at Bandai Namco, for example, and we knew they are great games. And our marketing team did the best to sell them, and they had great marketing campaigns. But then the market is so overcrowded these days, it's very difficult to get anything out there. It's just very tricky. As it's really not simple to push out a premium game these days. You need big marketing campaigns, and for most studios, big marketing campaigns simply is not the core skill they are having, right? So they are supposed to develop games and not create marketing around them. And a lot of marketing you have to do is kind of, I don't want to say lying, but you have to tell people, you have to keep telling people that this game is so great, you have to buy it, you really have to try convincing people. And that can be a very dirty business too, if we would actually admit it. So with free-to-play, the thing is you don't necessarily need a huge marketing campaign. You need a few users, you need a small campaign maybe to get some users in, but then they get engaged through the actual game and your game design, the heart of the game, and not just some marketing lies. I think this is something very beautiful about the free-to-play model. It's your design which counts and which engages the players. And that design has to trigger because you mentioned psychology, that design has to trigger our psychology. Our fun, we need to understand what fun actually is. And we have to transfer that into retention and in the end into monetization. This is like very, very high-level game design, a very high standard game design, which you barely see within the AAA sector, actually.
And But I mean, still there is in free to play. It's not like you don't do marketing; you do marketing there as well. I mean, you make. Usually, if you get some players in and then you start making some money, then you can spend that money back on ads, so you can get in more users. So, I mean, even though I agree that it's the game design that it's not like you watch an ad and then you have this paywall before you get to try it. You get to try it first, but you still have the problem if we put it in that way with the ads being there.
Well, the marketing in free-to-play works very, very different. You don't necessarily need a huge marketing campaign starting a year or something before the release of the game. Instead, you start the marketing when you have your very first and small iteration of the game. I can give you an example. I'm not only a founder of the Games Analysts, but I'm also co-founder of a small indie studio. And we try to put our knowledge from the Games Analyst into these games. And we have created a game with no marketing up front. We put it on the market, tested it with a very small marketing campaign, just a few €100, which every studio can afford usually, only to test first KPIs. When we saw KPIs are good, we kept developing. When we saw KPIs are bad, then we just skipped the prototype and made the next game. So there is no huge marketing campaign, almost no risk included, and we were only 2 people at that time. 8 weeks later, after release, we had 1 million users.
Cool.
And we kept developing the game. Every week there was a new update, and we made it bigger and bigger. And in the beginning, maybe it doesn't look very pretty and very small, but after like a few iterations, it's huge, and people got motivated to play the game through the game and not some marketing lies.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's also something that's very foreign to how it used to work, that you can develop the game while releasing it. It's like a game as a service. It's a living thing. It's not that you sit in your company for like 5 years and then release.
One of my favorite examples there is Fallout 76 or Anthem. Now they have tried to make, basically it's free-to-play games they made, just that they put a €60 price tag on top of it. So now the problem is when you offer a €60 product, that means you need a lot of content. Means they couldn't test it before in a small version because they already from the get-go had to have a lot of content. But that a lot of content was not that good because they didn't test it. They didn't test it out with users, and they didn't see what users are actually doing in the game. If they now had if they had released it like 1 year earlier than they actually released it, and give like a very small portion of it in high AAA quality, but a small type of Anthem, small type of Fallout, give it to the people, let them play it for free, people would have been accepting that it's not perfect yet because it's for free and everything and it's early. And the studios could have had a look at what people are actually doing in the game and could have had those games evolving over the time. And maybe they would have had great games at some point. Now they're almost doing the same. They are saying now, Anthem, we will just do it all again. We will make a better version now. That's what they're doing with it. With Fallout, they are kind of trying the same thing. But it's almost too late because they already have so much and was so costly. And now they're really having issues. If it were both free-to-play games from the get-go, maybe they would be great games now because they would have done exactly the thing users wanted to have. But they don't.
Vi är spelskaparna.
One of the things with free-to-play is also that you usually it's like a few percent of the user base that are actually paying for the entire thing. But since you don't have a cap on how much you can spend, it kind of makes it totally worth it. Why do you think it is like that?
It's almost with everything in life, actually. People have access to potentially everything, but only few people can truly afford everything, right? I would say it's usually the whales are rich people. This is just what's going to happen. And honestly,
and the whales are the ones that spend the most.
Yeah, sorry if that terminology isn't clear, but the whales are the ones which spend the most. That's usually less than 1% of all the users. And often they even recoup all the cost required to keep all the other players in the game. And those people often, they really don't care about spending money. They simply have it and they love your game and they're having a lot of fun with it. So they just spend money and they don't care. That is not necessarily a bad thing, I believe, especially if for this, another millions of players can also enjoy the game. I think that's a pretty great thing, potentially. Depends on how you use it, but there's also some ethical issues with it potentially, but that's its own topic.
There is, of course, the risk that someone that isn't rich also spend like above their limits or something.
This happens too, yeah. We have to be careful with these things, and we have to regulate ourselves. Mostly what I've seen in the games I've been working on, it is truly rich people who are spending a lot. I remember back at a company I worked for, we even invited those whales to talk to them. How do they live? What are they doing and stuff? And there was no like proper addicted people or anything like that. It was rich people. It was really people who had money and simply enjoyed going back to the game from day to day and meeting their people there and maybe even buying something for their people in their alliances and stuff. The goal of free-to-play games usually is never children or anything, because children don't really make the money. Maybe if you have a hyper-casual game and there's advertisement running in the game, then you don't care who's watching the advertisement. But if it's about true purchases in the game, children don't even have enough money. They are never the target audience or anything. It doesn't make sense. You really want to have adults who are having a lot of money.
In what ways do you think that these monetization strategies also makes you kind of have to have specific types of game design and gameplay that fits with this, or do you think you can make any game mechanic work with these type of strategies?
So at first I don't really think in game mechanics, because if we think in game mechanics, we only think in what has been there before, and we only copy or we stick to the past. I also don't think in game genres or anything. I try to ignore genre boxes and this type of games and so on. I think in psychology. I think in motivational factors. Why do people do anything? And there's actually a lot of psychology research. So this is what my talks and my workshops are about. A lot about psychology. Why do people play games? And if we understand this, we can only focus on triggering those motivational factors with any type of game mechanic you want to create. It doesn't matter. You can come up with your very own, very new thing. But this is only possible if you really try to ignore old game mechanics and just focus on humans and not old game mechanics, if that makes sense.
It's a bit abstract.
It is a bit abstract, so therefore I give workshops to make people understand.
But do you have any concrete example of?
So for example, one of the strongest motivational factors, and there's three main factors for intrinsic motivation, which are autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And I won't go too deep now, but the relatedness factor basically means social relatedness, doing something, caring for other people, doing something with them, maybe also fighting them in a game. This explains why multiplayer games are the most monetizing games on the market. And even non-multiplayer games, with games with a lot of narrative design, there's a lot of non-social relatedness inside, because you get connected to the characters in the game. You come back to your team in Mass Effect, for example, to talk to them and have a good time with them or anything. It is also there. Everyone wants this. Every person wants this. So if you now think of how to create a game which totally focuses on relatedness, the relatedness factor, so social, being social with each other, you only need this actually to have a lot of retention already. This is also why we are used to do chatting, go to chat rooms in the 90s. Maybe I did it quite a lot. I was going to chat rooms every day, met with people I don't know, and just wrote with them all day long. That is relatedness. We just do these things. Have this in a game, and then think about how can you set up goals so people can do something together. They have a reason to work together. They will stay in your game for a very, very long time as long as you give them goals. And then think about how can you monetize that. This is how you start with psychology first, instead of thinking of a feature like we need a multiplayer where we have to shoot each other or anything, if that makes sense.
And I guess like this is also common for products in general, like Facebook, of course, is
it's everywhere.
Successful because of this relatedness thing, for example.
It's same with companies and so on. If you keep paying, if you try to keep your people by paying them money, this is an extrinsic motivational factor that will destroy the intrinsic motivation of people. So if you rather focus on having people being together and working good as a team, then people stay in the company for the team and not necessarily for the money. And this is much stronger motivation to do a good job in the end. And it works in every field.
But if we look into your career, what has been the favorite project that you have worked on?
Oh, that is a really good question. Maybe it's really my own project right now, which is our mobile game. But also, I mean, there's simply some brands I love. I mean, I really, really like Dark Souls, and it was a pleasure to work on Dark Souls titles, for example. I love Tekken. And before Tekken 7 released, I was actually able to play against the Tekken director, Harada-san. In Europe, he visited Europe, and I think I forgot the country actually, but I was able to play against him, and that was great. So I also loved working on Tekken, for example.
Did you win?
No. He was really good. I never played Tekken 7 before because it wasn't released yet, so it wasn't quite fair though. But he is really, really good.
But can you talk about what you actually did when you worked with the Tekken, for example?
Yeah, for Bandai Namco, I especially did business and product analysis. So that means every product incoming, every product pitched to Bandai Namco in Europe had to go through me. And I did a business analysis on it. I was supposed to say, is it going to be successful or not? And that was on the market side, data side, but also from the game design side. And then if I said no, usually we didn't do it. And if I said yes, we sometimes did it. It always depends on what the managers and boss and the directors wanted in the end. But I was the guy in the middle, like deciding if it has potential or not.
Would they adapt if you had like this won't work because of this and this reason? And...
In some cases, we did it that way. And I may humbly say, and I'm very happy for that I had quite some influence on some bigger games out there. And this is something which I'm very proud of, actually, and which makes me very, very happy.
Okay. Something you can talk about?
It's always a little tricky, but let's put it like that. I think I discussed a lot with the marketing teams and with the production teams about the marketing strategy of the Dark Pictures anthology, if you have heard of it. Man of Medan just released a couple of weeks ago, which is a game by a supermassive studio, and they're the makers of Until Dawn.
Yeah.
And I played Man of Medan, by the way, with friends, as a great experience. I can only recommend.
Okay, cool.
Also, maybe I was able to work a little bit on Elden Ring. Can't tell too many details there, and I'm not saying that I had like huge influence, but I was able.
What game I didn't catch?
Elden Ring. That is
from
the makers of the Dark Souls makers, basically. And yeah, I was at least able to give quite a lot of feedback, which also went to Japan, to the team, to From Software, and I'm very happy about this too. I never know. It's not released yet, so we never know how much actually will be in the game, but I was allowed to give some feedback.
That's cool. That's really cool. And what's the game that you're working on with your own company?
Yeah. So at the moment, we're not focusing on making pretty games. We really focus on putting our theories into practice. We're still lacking of good game designers or like interface designers. So it's really, really not pretty, and just some assets we bought together. The game is called Pilot Royale, which is Not the prettiest name, but the name is proven by data. We had like a couple of names, much cooler names actually, but data doesn't lie in the end, and it's all about data, unfortunately, sometimes. So, and therefore we picked this name.
So you got the most users with that name.
Yeah. The if you want to say it like that, the cheapest users. So it's a lot about CPI, cost per install, and this was the lowest CPI with that name.
Okay.
And this is how we measure actually everything we do, every feature. We really look at the data, but all based on our former qualitative research, like on psychology and so on.
But like Pilot Royale, especially like for the last 2 years or something, Royale has been very like it has been the new type of game, and maybe over time it might change. I mean, if you made a new test with buying users with ads and trying out new names, perhaps you would get another outcome.
Yeah, that totally could be. I don't think we can change the name for this game.
No, I mean, now if it's out. But,
but this is not the main factor. Name is a little factor, but there's so many other factors to it. The gameplay is so much more important. So our goal was basically, at that time, there was already 3D aircraft games on the mobile market, but there is no proper accessible game. There was always like several buttons on the screen when you play the game, and our goal was trying to create a game with kind of a lot gameplay depth, so you can kind of play it as a core player, but you can play it all with one finger controls. So you can shoot with only your thumb, for example, in portrait mode. You can dodge rockets, you can make a barrel roll and everything. All these things only with one thumb. That was the goal. And it turns out if you set these kind of limitations to make it that accessible but keep the gameplay depth, you become very creative. And in most cases it works and you get better results than you ever had before. And this is the challenge of free-to-play game design.
Yeah, and then I guess because you were aiming for mobiles, you had to have it. That's why you set the restrictions on playing with one thumb.
But still, this also counts for every other game out there. I always can only recommend designers to question their decisions for controls and try to make it as accessible as possible. That doesn't mean dumbing down a game. It doesn't mean making the game easier, just more accessible to play. This will be a great benefit for everyone, like casual players, but also core players. And I'm not a great fan of these terminologies, by the way, casual and core, because I think it doesn't really exist. It always depends on the life situation of a person. Okay,
could you elaborate on that a bit?
Oh, it's a big topic on itself, and I'm talking so much already. So,
it's the purpose of this show.
So first of all, a problem is casual and core is connotated in a way. Casual often in a more negative way. We shouldn't think like that. We should take it as it is. And often, like a lot of us people, especially traditional gamers, we become more and more casual because we're getting families, we're having a job, we're very stressed. We simply can't play a game for many, many hours anymore. Even though we consider ourselves as core gamers or very engaged gamers, we can't be actual core gamers anymore. So it would be great if there's a way to still have very deep gameplay, but much more accessible, which just fits in our lives. And this is also one example, one reason why the Nintendo Switch is potentially so successful, because it's so much more accessible than a PlayStation 4, Xbox, or PC. It's so much easier to use. You can get into the game much faster and so on. And this feels good to many people, especially traditional gamers these days.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so let's go into the segment Under the Magnifying Glass. And you have chosen the game Undertale, and I wonder why.
Yeah, Undertale. Even though I mentioned before my favorite games are actually like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and Mass Effect, which really, really meant a lot to me, and I feel like they even like developed me as a person. Undertale is a very, very special type of software. It goes a little bit this Stanley Parable way, if you want so, which is also a great game. But Undertale really, I can't spoil it too much, but Undertale has like a meta level of narrative design, and then even a meta level. And the narrative design is not only told through the story and the plot, but also like because the game at some point kind of starts to play the player. So the player isn't playing the game anymore, but the game starts playing the player. But you will only realize that very, very late in the game, and that means you have to play it actually 3 times. Which again is not true because, and now we are slowly going into spoiler territory, you kind of have to, even the third playthrough is still the same game, but you don't realize until you actually finished it. So if you play Undertale, play it all the way through and try out everything you can think of. And this is, to me, sincerely a piece of art. And this is a kind of way we can use games which hasn't been done so many times before. And this also shows us we can still learn so much if it comes to game design and this media especially. It can do so much more than books or movies can. We just have to make use of it.
Yeah. I played Undertale, and I also think it's a great game. And it's interesting how it's like when you start off at the surface, it's like this really, really, really old school RPG. But then
a very weird one on top of that.
very, very weird one. But like game mechanic wise. Yeah. But then like for every step of the way, strange things happens, and you new gameplays, and it's a totally new experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But that type of game, I feel, would be really hard to combine with a free-to-play monetization.
Now we are thinking in game type boxes again, and I would really encourage to get out of these boxes, rather try to understand what is happening with you when you're playing this game, what is the game doing with you, and try to take this meta knowledge, I like to call it meta knowledge, and adapt it and take it to other games, to free-to-play games. How can you do that and stuff? And this is where it's truly getting interesting, I think. And we are still far away from reaching what games can actually be. So,
but there is, don't you think? Maybe I'm thinking too squarely, but if you would take a game like that, right, and because it's developed by one developer, to get that to work in a non-premium way, you would have to spend a lot of time and effort and thinking into how you would monetize it in another way. And a one-person team doesn't really have that.
Well, one-person teams never created huge games. They created small games. That's kind of a normal thing. However, but even one person could start small. And the nice thing about free-to-play games is you can make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you can also have a long-term strategy, even if you're only 1 or 2 people.
But I mean, for this type of experience as Undertale is...
I think it is possible, but not with the first iteration. Maybe after 50 iterations or something. Like every week you add something up to the plan, and this would be possible. I want to give a little bit of another example. Metal Gear Solid 5 had a very, very interesting multiplayer mode where Kojima-san actually wanted to have the entire community to work together on a common goal, but it was never very obvious. So I can only recommend to read a little bit about it on the internet, because only very few people actually really know about the multiplayer mode on Metal Gear Solid 5 and the art inside. But it's possible to create nuclear bombs in that multiplayer mode and to bomb other players when they attack your base. Which is a little bit of like Clash of Clans, by the way. You can attack each other's bases, but with the Metal Gear Solid gameplay. So there was some meta knowledge taken maybe from Clash of Clans and put into Metal Gear Solid, but people don't realize because it looks so different.
Okay.
So and with the bombs though, they were very powerful. If you had such a nuclear bomb, no one will attack you because you're too powerful. But then if they have a nuclear bomb as well, then it's like no one wants to attack anyone anymore, and it destroys the entire gameplay, actually, potentially. And this is the exact point. The game now is telling a narrative by its own. There's no story telling you that this is happening. It's a player's. And this was all intended by Kojima-san. And there was a goal. There was something which was possible to make the game playable again. You can dispose your nuclear bomb. But that means like you have to talk to the other players and tell them, hey, let's all dispose the bombs to fix the game again. And there was even like a hidden cutscene, which was actually, I think, never seen in a legal way because it never happened. But when you all bombs, nuclear bombs, are disposed on one server, there was this cutscene upcoming, like the world is kind of in peace now and everything is better now because we talk to each other and we actually don't want this anymore and so on. So it's an anti-war statement made in that multiplayer mode, which you can only see on YouTube because some people actually hacked the code and got that video out. It's super, super interesting. And Kojima-san is doing something similar now with Death Stranding. Different, but somewhat similar. And potentially these multiplayer parts could be free-to-play games, and then you have something going this direction. So it is possible. That's what I'm saying.
I'm getting pretty satisfied. Is there something you would like to add before we have our closing?
I think I have been talking so much already, right? But this is the kind of stuff I love to talk about, and I really never want to like push people into free-to-play, but I want to open people's mind and just make something good out of the free-to-play thing. Don't think of it as a negative, threatening thing. Think of it as something which has still a lot of opportunity for creativity, and we will have to create great games there because all the free-to-play audience now, their standards will rise, just as our standards increased when we're playing our first games. They were kind of shitty games maybe at that time, if you think back of your first games. They weren't very good, but we really, really liked them. And these days we are playing high quality AAA games because this is all what we can play these days because our standards are so high. This is gonna happen to the free-to-play audience as well. They will have very high standards and they will at some point even look for art in free-to-play games. And if you can't deliver, then you can't be successful even on the free-to-play market anymore.
Okay, cool. We'll see in the future if it pans out like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So thank you so much, Patrick Rose. How can someone contact you or follow you if they want to, one of the listeners?
Of course, I have a website, which is gamesanalysts.com. So if you write in that form there, I will directly receive the email, or you just contact me through my email, what is my email address actually? I have to check myself. Patrick@gamesanalysts.com. And well, that is me. You will actually also find me on LinkedIn or whatever. You can write me on any channel.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was very enjoyable.